These are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liz Jones. I'm the Women Bike Manager with the League of American Bicyclists. Thank you all for attending. We're really excited to be able to share some of this really interesting information with you regarding women in the future of bicycling. So thank you all for attending. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started with the slide. You should all be able to see my screen. For some reason, it wasn't letting me advance from my keyboard. So we're going to go ahead and try to click through. So on the call today, we have myself, and we also have Dr. Adonia Lugo. She's the Equity Initiative Manager, so also with the League. Just to give you a little bit of background into the Women Bike program, who's hosting today's webinar. Our job here at the League is to create pathways for women of diverse backgrounds to embrace biking as an everyday activity. So we're really looking to make sure that there is equity in how women show up in the bicycling world. And that can mean lots of things, whether that's advocacy or retail, as we'll talk today. We want to give a quick mention of thank you to our sponsors that make Women Bike and webinars like this possible. You can see all of them here. I definitely encourage you that if you enjoy the programming that we're able to provide, please consider supporting our sponsors. Now, today's presenters. We have joining us today, and we're very excited, Jay Townley and Elliot Gluskin of the Gluskin Townley Group. You can see their extensive background both in bicycle retail as well as doing research in this specific arena. And I tell you, they are a wealth of knowledge. Jay and Elliot, would you like to give a quick introduction of each of yourselves?
Certainly. My name is Elliot Gluskin. I'm the managing partner of Gluskin Townley Group. And other than hearing my voice, I also will have the role of assisting with this afternoon's webinar. So if I get too quick or too slow on the slides, there's plenty of backup, and Jay will just yell at me. That's okay. We'll also be assisting with the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And for those of you who are relatively new to GoToMeeting, you'll be able to ask your questions at any time simply by typing them in the chat box, which is on the well, on my screen, it's on the right-hand lower portion of the screen. So I will now let Jay introduce himself.
Thank you. And thank you, Liz. My name is Jay Townley. I'm a partner in the Gluskin Townley Group, and I'll be the primary presenter for this webinar. And I would encourage Adonia and Liz ask questions at any time. Elliot knows that he can do that. Also, I'll repeat, there is a chat box for the listeners and the participants to type in your questions. Liz, if you and Elliot would monitor those, if there's somebody that wants an immediate answer, we certainly can interrupt to do that. I'm going to get started by taking a look at the agenda for this afternoon's webinar. And our purpose here, we'll also explain as we get into the detail of the presentation. We've got four primary issues that we're going to be covering in the time that we have with you. We're going to be taking a look at the data behind the components of the overall theme, Numbers Don't Lie, why women are essential to the future of bicycling. Now, we're going to look at some of the data behind the statement that women are still underrepresented in too many aspects of the American bicycle business, but are having a significant impact on the economics of the bicycle movement and the business. Women are also the new majority in this country. I know those of you that have followed our webinars have heard us say that for probably a year and a half now. But really understanding what women are saying and what their bicycling and bicycle wants and needs are has become vitally important to the mainstream bicycle business and advocacy side. And finally, women have to begin to have more impact on the bicycle business if the traditional mainstream commercial trade hopes to continue to be viable going forward. And then we're going to close with a summary. And as Elliot said, we hope a spirited question and answer session. And we'll be happy to field any questions that you feel that you need an immediate answer to. Just watch the type it in the chat box, and Elliot and Liz will be watching that for you.
Great. So if it's okay with you, Jay, I'll go ahead and if you can, we can hand over control of the screen to you.
Actually, if you'd give it to Elliot.
Okay, great.
He's the keeper of the power.
All right.
If that works, great. If that doesn't, Liz, I'd be happy to just continue and cue you. Ah, here we go.
No, you're sorry. Okay, everyone should see the slide with the big yellow box on it.
Cool. That's where I think we're supposed to be.
Yes, I think so too.
Now, based on our research, and I'm referring to the Gluskin Townley Group, and the data that it's produced, and we have a number of American bicyclist studies out there that we've been conducting annually, plus some of the detail that we've looked at in boring down into things like the women's market. Women are, in fact, an essential to the future of the bike business. And at least one of our purposes here, as I said, with this webinar is to initiate a dialogue and to sound a wake-up call, in essence, to the advocates and the bike shop owners in the U.S. bike industry concerning the economic importance of this statement. Now, right now, women are responsible for $2.6 billion of the $6 billion direct effect retail dollars that make up the economy of the bicycle industry in the United States. That's why the 2.6 is in yellow here. So we keep it very much in mind. I consider that, and I think Elliot does too, to be a smaller, much smaller number than it really should be and can be as we move forward, because the U.S. bicycle business has been stuck in a flat, no-growth market since before the Great Recession, and there's no signs of improvement. So as the industry continues to do the same things it has done for the last 15 years, which includes, unfortunately, for the specialty bicycle retail channel or the bike shop channel, talking down to and generally condescending to the vast majority of women in this country, the industry is going to have to change the way it approaches the women's market, essentially, if it's going to do anything about the flat market conditions it finds itself in now, or from the standpoint of the future, certain channels, including the specialty bicycle retail channel or the bike shop channel, are simply not going to look the same or have the same benefits and be able to take the same advantage of the market as they have in the past. In short, if the specialty bike retail channel, which is where the bulk of the dollars are, doesn't change and change very rapidly to take advantage of both the opportunity in the women's market but the full potential of the women's market, the specialty bike retail channel isn't going to look tomorrow like it does today. Now, this first table isn't by itself startling at all. In fact, it's pretty mundane. What it does show is the number of adult male bicyclists and the number of female adult bicyclists in 2014. And by the way, just for reference, everything we're going to show here today is adult bicyclists 18 years of age and over. Now, what's interesting here, for those of us that have followed and studied bicycle riding data for decades, is adult women capturing 51% of all adult bicycle riders in 2014, finally achieving the same percentage of adult bicycle riders as women represent of the national population. For years, we looked at women's participation in bicycle riding at well below 50%, and struggling at times to be significant as we look at the different sectors or clusters of that industry. But 2014 findings, adult women now are at 51% of all adult bicyclists in the country. So that's a major stepping stone in keeping with the changes in the marketplace. Now, and what I mean by changes in the marketplace, changes in demographics in the marketplace. Now, this next table shows total adult bicyclists over the last 3 years. To your far left is 2012. To your far right, 2014. And it shows the shift to women representing just over half of all adult bicyclists. Look at the first three columns to the left. And total adult bicyclists are the first line, followed by the genders, men and women. And in 2012, men were 51% of adult bicyclists. And in 2013, men gained slightly to 51.4%. But in 2014, men dropped to their national representation of 49%, and women are also at their national representation of 51%. So this shows you the transition that occurred. We finally have seen women of total bicycle riding participants falling into the pattern of the national representation from 2012 to 2014. Now, there may be some additional small shifting back and forth over the next 2 to 3 years, but essentially women are the majority of the U.S. population and now are the majority and assume their position as the majority of adult bicycle riders, and as such have established their importance to the bicycle market and the bicycle business and the U.S. bicycle business economy. Now this next slide is a little more complex, and I'll try to make sure that we get through it without losing you. This table shows adult bicyclists planning to purchase a new bicycle in 2014 by gender. Now let me make a comment, because Elliot and I have this discussion every time we look at any I plan to buy responses from consumers. Planning to buy and actually buying are two distinctly different things. So these are the consumers that said I plan to buy. At the end of 2014, we'll measure again and see who actually did. But this is based on the folks adults that said, yeah, I plan to buy a new bike in 2014, and we broke it down by gender. The same percentage of men and women, interestingly, answered that they are planning to purchase a new bicycle in 2014. That's 19% of men and 19% of women as you move down the columns. However, this translates to slightly more women at 2.5 million, representing 19% of a larger number, compared to the 2.4 million, representing 19% of the men who are adult bicyclists, and the numbers work their way up, and you can see what the percentages are applying to. Men responded that they are planning to spend an average of $833 on the new bicycle they plan to purchase in 2014, and women responded that they're planning to spend $468. Now, you can't hold people to this exactly, but it gives you a good idea where the thinking is. This results in a projected $2.1 billion in new bicycle expenditures in 2014 for men, and $1.2 billion with a B in total planning expenditures at retail for new bicycles for women in 2014. Women represent 36% of this planned expenditure. Now, as I said, it's a planned expenditure. The other piece that we're going to pound on here is that this, we feel, is a low number, that women have been left out of and excluded from the bike business and from the bicycling community. And I'm talking about across the board, women as a major piece of the population. So they therefore, when asked the question of what will they spend and will they buy, we think are well underrepresented from the standpoint of what their true potential is in the marketplace if they were simply invited in a nice, friendly manner to enjoy bicycles and bicycling. Now, this next table,
Jay?
Again, I'm sorry?
Oh, I said we have a couple of questions before
Sure.
you move on to the next slide. One is referencing the slide previous to this. What is the method to determine the total number of adult bicyclists? So what was the method the American Bicyclist Study used to determine the total adult bicyclist numbers and percentages?
Sure. Elliot, do you want to go to cover the methodology?
Sure. What we did is we went to a nationally representative, geographically balanced panel of consumers, and this is for each of these years. And we first asked them if they owned a bicycle that they purchased either new or used. And Then we did some statistical analysis, which enabled us to do market sizing. And we always look at, when it comes to the totals number that you see in this first line. I moved back to that slide. We look at these numbers and look at the National Sporting Goods Association's participation numbers. And, we're not spot on, which is good, but, we are within, 5% of what they end up reporting. So we know that these numbers are realistic and that they're statistically valid.
Okay.
And we use a statistician to help us balance the panel as well. So not only do we start out with using a panel that is balanced, but then we go back in and make sure that the statistical work is done to balance the results that we have.
Great. And then I think there's been a lot of questions coming in, just so you know I am getting them to the participants, and I'm going to kind of try to space them out because I do think there's some good data that I think will maybe answer some of these down the line. But I think one that is really relevant here is how are you defining bicyclists?
Oh, that's a great question. A bicyclist, well, Elliot, go ahead. From the standpoint of the American Bicyclist Study.
Yeah, we define a bicyclist as no use, and that they have any riding activity. They have to be riding a bike at least once a month. They have to be, spending, any money at retail on a bicycle or bicycling products. And that's essentially how we define who a bicyclist is.
There's been some discussion about this too, and we can certainly get more into this later, but the National Sporting Goods Association for 30 years has defined a bicyclist as an individual 7 years of age or older who rides 6 days or more in a year. So that's the reason that our numbers will vary, as Elliot said, 3, 4, 5% over the years, because we're asking screener questions to make sure that we capture cyclists, but it doesn't match up exactly to what the NSGA definition is. Is that correct, Elliot?
Yes, that's correct, Jay.
Okay. Does that answer the question, Liz?
Yeah, I think so. So, yep, let's keep going.
Okay. So, Elliot, if you can advance up one more beyond this. That's it, right there. This table shows adult bicyclists' planned purchases of all bicycle-related products and new bicycles in 2014. So at the top, we show the 19% of adult male and adult women that responded that they're planning to purchase a new bicycle in 2014. Next, we show the average amount they're planning to spend on all bicycling-related products in addition to the new bike itself. Now here again, men are planning to spend more at the average of $1,027 compared to women who responded they plan to spend an average of $565 on all additional bicycle-related products. Now keep in mind there's a range here and we're dealing with the average or the mean, but still we feel women are underrepresented because of being left out of the mainstream discussion about bicycles and bicycling and also what's available to assist and make that a more enjoyable experience. Now, the total planned expenditures hold to the same percentages as we saw for the new bicycles because we want to be sure that we presented what we feel is a conservative view. With men planning to spend $2.5 billion and women planning to spend $1.4 billion on all additional bicycle-related products. By the way, the potential for change here is certainly that $1.4 billion can be increased dramatically. The grand total combined planning or planned new bicycle purchases and planned purchases of all bicycle-related products is $4.6 billion for men and $2.6 billion for women, slightly above at the total of $7.2 billion, the market size. But as I said, what happens here is folks that are asked what they plan to spend tend to overpromise. And so I've used only the new bicycle and the plan to spend on anything but the new bicycle or except the new bicycle to give us an idea of what the potential is and where the spending intentions are. So this is what people plan to do by gender, and the $2.6 billion we saw at the opening comes from this compilation of numbers for what women plan to spend in 2014 on new bikes, and then all of the gear and the accessories. And we think this is a number that certainly can be built on, and we will see as we get further into the presentation why it's an extremely important number to keep in mind as we see where the growth in the number of adult bicycles is coming from by gender.
And just to clarify,
Now,
because this is, oh, sorry, really quick, just to clarify, the $2.6 billion then is just projected amount on all new bicycles and all bicycling related products, and not necessarily tied to women-specific bikes or merchandise, correct?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. It's a response to the question of what women, adult women, said they would spend, whether they would buy and what they said they would spend, keeping in mind this is 19% of the total of women cyclists. So 19% said they plan to do a new bike. We took that same percentages and applied it to the women that said they plan to buy everything but the bicycle, new or used.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know if I confused you or answered the question.
Nope. Just asking clarity. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, you can extrapolate different numbers off of this, but we're trying to keep this in within reason, simply because plan to purchase numbers tend to get ballooned out of proportion because at the onset, consumers will plan one thing and do another. So you have to be very careful in using them, and we hope we've been careful here and conservative in making the presentation. The point being that women are significant from the standpoint of what they are spending and plan to spend, but they could be even more significant if they were brought into the community and made to feel more welcome, and also given the advantage of the education about what's out there to make the whole of the bicycle riding experience more enjoyable. Now, moving on to the next premise, women in the bicycle movement and business, from our standpoint, we feel that they're having a significant and important positive impact on the bicycle movement, despite the fact that they're underrepresented, particularly in the business side of the bicycling culture and the bicycling community in the United States. Now, we hear an awful lot about this in the bike trade relative to the question Liz just asked. Is bike-specific clothing, bike-specific bicycles, the movement toward bike-specific? We'll touch on this a little later, but in general, what the industry has done is continue to think of bicycling as a sport, in our opinion, but also from our analysis of the data, have continued to present to the women of the United States bicycling as a sport, as opposed to what many women, in fact maybe the majority of women, are telegraphing back and telling us and the industry that what they're interested in is bicycling is a very diverse activity. And we'll get more into the detail of that. But credit has to be given in this statement we're making to the women who are active, because they've been working hard at getting their voices heard and their presence felt. And it's time, we believe, that the bicycle business takes action to reflect the demographics of the American market. Now, this will take us into this table. Now, we don't have data for the supply side of the American bicycle business, or believe me, we would use it here. But this table shows a summary of the 2013 findings of the National Bicycle Dealers Association U.S. Specialty Bicycle Retail Channel study and report that featured the demographics of American bike shops. The demographics of American bike shops were not looked at in previous studies nor in the most recent study, but in 2013, it was a big piece of this annual survey that the NBDA does. The data shows that bike shop owners are 89% male, 96% white, and they are baby boomers averaging 53 years of age. Now, the husband and wife teams we read about are only 33% of the ownership, and the bike shops owned by women are obviously less than 11% of the total bike shops in the country. So these are the facts that we look at. The demographics of the bicycle shop ownership in the U.S., we don't think is going to change appreciably in the near term, which underscores the necessity of the bike shop channel of trade opening up and encouraging a more inclusive and friendly retail culture that is staffed to reflect the gender and the ethnicity of the neighborhoods and the communities bike shops serve, and moving up through the channel of trade to the suppliers and the brands. So again, credit to the women that are active in the business, including the two women on this call, because they've made their voices heard and the point is getting across. But from the standpoint of catching up, the industry has a lot of ground to make up, and bike shops are not the only channel of trade selling bicycles. And as we'll see, women will, from the standpoint of how they spend their money, will honor retailers with their bicycle-related business, and they'll honor those retailers who are the most friendly and the most welcoming. And it's up to the bike shop channel to reach out and win the trust and the retail business of the women's market and the potential of the women's market. Now, from 1990 to 2000, bicycling shifted, as we said earlier, from being an activity to being a sport. The American bicycle movement business has prospered over the last 15 years because the primarily upper-income white male baby boomers became bicycle enthusiasts. And most recently, by attracting women to the sport, as we mentioned, of bicycling. However, baby boomers no longer drive the bicycle market. We just did a webinar on this specific point with the data, but we could show you that baby boomers are no longer driving the bicycle market, and they've given way to Gen X and Gen Y, who are younger, more diverse, and with women as the new majority. In fact, when you look at the demographics, women are over 60% of the Gen Y and Gen X adult bicycle riders. The younger, more diverse drivers of the bicycle market then are shifting bicycling to being a diverse activity and less of a sport. While the industry in turn is primarily marketing to women as a sport, and we're simply saying you need to stop and rethink that. And women are not the only new majority. They're also, from the standpoint of they're being the new majority from the electorate standpoint, they're being the new majority from the bicycling community standpoint. They're also the key to the future of the bicycle movement in America, we think. And accordingly, they are essential to the future of the bicycle business.
Real quick, I just want to hop in and just remind our panelists that if you are in an area where there's some background noise, please mute your line if you aren't speaking, because it can be kind of hard to hear Jay. So either mute using the controls given to you through GoToMeeting, or just actually hit mute on your cell phone or desk phone. Thanks.
Okay. Now this table shows the total number of adult women in the U.S. and the total number of adult women bicyclists, representing 11% of all adult women. Now said another way, adult women bicyclists represent only 11% of the U.S. adult women, or all U.S. adult women, and the potential for growth here is huge. There's tremendous upside, and that includes upside across all household incomes and ethnicities in the United States. We're already seeing some of the effect of those good points, those great points relative to the demographics, but the bike industry is not taking advantage of them, nor in turn, as I said, doing the education required to take more advantage of what that potential is from an economic standpoint. Now this table is a little more complex. This table shows adult bicyclists by segments or clusters in 2012 compared to 2014. And don't panic. The 4 segments or clusters were established in 1990, and they are in the top of the table here: enthusiasts, moving ups, casuals, and infrequents. The cluster definitions are miles ridden in a warm weather month, number of visits to a bike shop. I forgot the third one, Elliot. He must have been the guy that had to mute.
It's very likely. But I mean,
Yeah.
just to kind of recap, is that these categories have to do with frequency of riding, frequency to visit a shop. I think people can kind of infer for themselves that obviously enthusiasts would be high numbers of those things, and then infrequents would be low numbers, correct?
Right.
Exactly.
And the third item is the amount spent on their last new bike.
Thank you, which is why we were harping on the numbers. So, in these three or four clusters, which have been used consistently since 1990, which is good, because now we have consistency of comparison. Look at 2012, which is a lower set of numbers, and 2014, the upper set of numbers by gender. In 2012, for all bicyclists, as we said from the previous slides, males were 51% of all adult bicyclists, females 49%. But look at it by cluster. Enthusiasts, the most active and most hardcore cyclists that are the core customers of bike shops, males at 78%, women at 22%. Now let's move up to 2014, and that shifted enthusiast males at 65.5%, females at 34.5%. Moving ups are the wannabes. And in 2012, males were 55%, females 45% of this cluster. You move up to 2014, women are now 42%, males at 57%. This is the only cluster where females decline, males increase. So if you look all the way down at the bottom and the difference, it's the only cluster where males actually have an increase. Females do too, but it's the only cluster where males also have an increase in the number of adult bicycle riding participants in the group. Casuals and infrequents are the largest of the groups of cyclists. And casuals in 2012 were 62% male, 38% female. In 2014, look at the difference. 49.9% male, over 50% at 50.1% female. And now infrequents, where the greatest opportunities lie, is in these two groups. Infrequents in 2012, 44% male, 56% female. You move up to 2014, 40.5% male, 59.5% female. Now, go down to the differences, the last three rows. And overall, for all adult bicyclists, males lost 190,000 overall participants between 2012 and 2014. Females gained 838,000. And these are adults. These are 18 years of age and older. These doesn't include kids. Enthusiasts, 241,000 less males, 552,000 more females. So the industry selling the sport of cycling to women has worked from the standpoint of increasing the number of females, but at the same time we're losing men at almost 250,000. Moving ups, as I said, it's the only cluster where you have an increase in male and female. Casuals, over 1 million males less in the casual segment, or in that cluster. 336,000 females, an increase of 336,000 females. Infrequents, 552,000 less males, 293,000 more females. So this gets to the core of the numerical argument, or the discussion, if you will, relative to the dynamics of what's occurring in the changes that underpin women becoming the majority of adult cyclists in the United States. They're also gaining in every one of the segments, and males are dropping off. Only in the moving up segment have males gained. In all other segments, they've dropped off. The total being 190,000 less men 18 years of age or older riding a bicycle in 2014 compared to 2012, 838,000 more women riding a bicycle in 2014 compared to 2012. Now,
so a couple of questions really quick.
Certainly.
Can you explain moving ups I think I understand infrequent, casual. I think I understand the other categories, but maybe a little more clarification on the moving ups. Like, what can you define that?
Sure. Moving up to the wannabes. Less mileage than an enthusiast. Obviously, more mileage than a casual. They go to a bike shop more often than infrequents or casuals. They spend more money on new and used bikes than casuals and infrequents. Not all of them are full. You'll see a little later on. Not all of them are fully supportive of bike shops, but they tend to be the folks that are at the bottom of the bike shop customer list. So moving ups are the folks that are pushing up and become enthusiasts. They graduate up into the enthusiast category. But a moving up is separated from a casual by the simple fact that more of them will go to a bike shop. They spend more for a bicycle. They ride more miles in a warm weather month. Okay. And so the relative numbers are driven by those three identifiers.
Great. And then just one more clarity on the chart that we're looking at. This is a question from the audience. The numbers under adult bicyclists represent the total numbers that are extrapolated out into these other four categories, correct?
That is correct. The total numbers are extrapolated from several different points, but they start with the American Bicyclist Study Panel, or the panel we use to develop the American Bicyclist numbers.
Okay.
And then the extrapolation is from there.
And I just want to do just like a quick check-in. We have a lot of questions and a lot of interest for more like discussion on solutions. So I want to keep rolling through. I think the purpose of this webinar, just for folks to understand a little bit, is to sort of get a handle on some of the data, and then especially the new data that's emerging that the Gluskin Townley Group was able to provide. That's definitely going to set the stage for having, I think, a more robust conversation about women's role in bike retail in the future. So, but I do want to make sure we leave enough time for questions at the end.
Okay, I hear you loud and clear.
Great, no worries, thanks.
The next area that we're moving into here is the assertion that we're making that from the standpoint of the women's market, we really need to understand what women are really saying to the marketplace and the business, and really understanding what they're saying and what their wants and needs are as becoming vitally important. Now, this particular illustration is showing, some of you may be aware of this, that this is the winner of a design competition that was recently concluded, but where consumers, in effect, were asked to vote for their favorite out of 5 submissions that were made. This is a picture of what's called Denny. It's the winner of the Ultimate Utility Bike Design Competition. Now, the Fuji brand has indicated that they're going to produce this product in the 2015 model year, but without going into the detail, this certainly is not your conventional bicycle, nor your father's Oldsmobile, if anybody remembers that. And moving right along here, from the standpoint of where this fits in, it appears that at least one of the objectives of the bike design project, which is a collaboration, by the way, between Levi's, who you know from the standpoint of jeans, the clothing provider, and the nonprofit Oregon Manifest Group and some others that are part of the project, is taken in this quote from the project's mission statement. And I quote, "The two-wheeled revolution isn't going to roll out on niche or specialty bikes. It's going to be born on the streets and will be spread by the urban rider." Now, more and more, that's a woman. Most people want to lead healthier, more sustainable lives, yet they don't consider themselves cyclists. The Bike Design Project is aimed at these citizen riders, inciting the creation of new bike designs that meet their everyday needs and provide a better transportation experience. Now, what this is saying from the standpoint of the data and what's behind the data is, as we said, as women in particular, and the the non-enthusiast cyclists, moving to those two groups to the right of that previous chart we saw, which are the casuals and the infrequents, and probably moving up into the moving ups as well, are more interested in bicycling as a diverse activity as opposed to a sport. Now, this next slide or table goes to a part of that issue. Now, what this shows simply is an answer to the question, are you riding your bicycle as much as you'd like, by gender? And in 2014, 40% of males said, yeah, I'm riding my bike as much as I'd like, and 60% said, no. Look at the female side, women. In 2014, 26% of women said, yeah, I'm riding my bike as much as I would like. 74% said, no, I'm not riding my bicycle as much as I would like. The point here is that I don't know that the combination of advocacy and particularly the industry is listening carefully to what women are saying. They certainly are saying that they're not riding their bicycles as much as they'd like, and therein lies a huge opportunity to do what needs to be done, including create safer environments, taking a look at all the good work the advocates are doing from the standpoint of facilities, but also including listening carefully to where women ride, what they're looking for in the way of a product, could yield really, I said, huge results for the bike industry by listening carefully and giving women what they want and need in order to get back on and ride their bicycles more frequently. Now, this next table is a demographic profile of adult bicyclists by gender. And the 74% of women who said they're not riding their bicycles as much as they would like, by the way, and while the increase in the number of adult bicyclists is a shift toward one aspect of diversity, the race of both men and women shows the need for more equity, diversity, and inclusiveness in the American bicycle movement. Simply stated, when we look at the demographics of adult bicycle riders in 2014, 85% of males are white, 85% of females are white. African Americans are at 8% and 7% respectively, below the national numbers. Hispanics are well below national representation, 4%. And Asians are close at 8% of men, but well below national averages at 4% of females. And lastly, we've highlighted this last piece, children under 18 in the household. 27% of males, adult male bicyclists, said that they have children under 18 in the household, 43% of females, which is not surprising, but it raises a number of issues relative to this point of listening carefully to what women have to say, because with 43% of adult women cyclists saying that they have children under 18 in the household, they are holding the keys to getting more kids on bikes. If you can convince that 43% that bicycling is a good family activity, that's good for the family, good for the kids, healthy for everybody involved, good for everybody involved, you stand a good opportunity to get more butts on bikes, including those of children. Now, we talk about women representing a huge potential and that they have to have more of an impact on the bicycle business that the traditional mainstream commercial trade hopes to continue to be viable in this country. This means that the mainstream commercial trade is going to have to reach out and welcome more women, and in particular, bike shops. And the bike shop channel of trade is going to have to change and become more inclusive and much less intimidating, or face the possibility of the potential of the diverse women's market going substantially to other channels of trade to be able to get at those things that it wants and needs out of the bicycling experience. Now, Liz, I don't know if you or Adonia have seen the TV ads or the print ads that Huffy, as a brand name, Huffy Bicycles, has been running on a national campaign this summer. But the last time I checked, they'd had about 14 YouTube videos they had produced. They're probably over that at this point. And essentially what Huffy has been doing is using a young girl, a 10-year-old girl, as the focal point and the motivator to, in the videos, to talk to women about women getting back on bicycles and enjoying bicycling the way they did when they were kids. And my point is that there's at least one brand name out there, Huffy, who understands clearly that in the path of purchase, one of the key contacts that they have to make is with women referred to as latent cyclists, women who rode bikes when they were kids, don't ride anymore because nobody has explained to them the fun and the enjoyment. And here's a company, Huffy, that's using a 10-year-old girl to make that contact and also talk about the fun, the excitement, the enjoyment of getting back on a bicycle and enjoying all of the benefits and the aspects. So we're encouraged from what we see by the fact that there's at least one brand out there, maybe the only brand at this point, that actually gets a piece of the story. And if either one of you or any of the audience have seen that particular set of ads, they know what I'm talking about. Now, this leads us to something that I'll cover quickly in the interest of making sure that we have time to go to the Q&A, and that's what we refer to as the endemic prejudice, and what Shimano and IDEO, a very well-respected consumer research firm located in San Francisco. By the way, it's IDEO that does all the work for Apple. A few years ago did research, this is prior to the Great Recession, 2007. They referred to what they found is not the endemic prejudice, they referred to it as the novice's problem journey. What this boils down to is the research is clear that the vast majority of women who are non-cyclists or are the latent cyclists who would like to get back into the activity but are really not quite sure what to do are running into a situation where the specialty bicycle retailer or bike shop community tends to be intimidating and does one of several things that are very bad from the standpoint of women actually shopping in bike shops. If you look at it from a numerical standpoint, the vast majority of non-cycling women really don't want to go into bike shops. And if you look at the casuals and the infrequents, they didn't buy their bicycles from bike shops. So part of what needs to be done very carefully here is to understand that in order to grow the business, the specialty bike retail channel, for one, is going to have to take a close look at changing the way it approaches women. And as we've said, become less exclusive, more inclusive, and also don't think that, from the standpoint of the approach, that a woman who has not ridden a bicycle in years would not become a good customer of a bike shop and would not in turn be a multiplier who would use word of mouth and the social media to make sure that the good work of a bike shop is spread and that more people come in as the end result and more customers and more footfall occurs for bike shops who are, for the most part today, struggling to bring more people into their places of business. Now I'm going to move on to what the research showed from the standpoint of the retail experience and do this very quickly. But suffice it to say that what the research showed is for the novice cyclist, and we borrowed, as I said, this presentation from the one Shimano gave in 2007 at the Bicycle Leadership Conference, that the typical woman shopping for a bicycle and the typical man who is also intimidated by bike shops was not able to relate to either the bike shop or what it found in the bike shop or to the employees in the bike shop. I don't seem to belong. I don't know where to go. I don't understand the salesperson. I don't want to test ride. What I want to do is understand and enjoy the experience. These 10 points came up again and again when the IDEO folks put together the research they had done. So without belaboring a point, I want to make sure that it's clear that the specialty bike shop channel of trade has to deal with the endemic prejudice or the novice's problem journey, and it's going to have to deal with it in a positive way, which will be extremely profitable to the bike shop channel of trade. Or women in particular are going to find a way, just as they have in the design of product, to be able to get the bicycle products that are wanted and needed in the marketplace. We'll move on to the next slide, Elliot. Now this table begins to get down to some of the key points here relative to why all of the emphasis on let's get rid of the endemic prejudice. Remember that in the 4 clusters, one of the key criterion for determining where a adult bicycle rider falls in the clusters is the number of times they visited a bike shop. And we look at that in the research we do. In 2014, for those that visited a bike shop, so in other words, everybody that said, yeah, I visited a bike shop at least once, the average for those that visited a bike shop among males was 3 visits, for females 2.7, just a little less than that. The average for all respondents, this is everybody that responded to the survey, whether they frequent a bike shop or not, males 1.3 visits, females 1. And then here's what should drive the point home about why the changes have to be made to become more inclusive, more friendly, more accepting. Individuals that said, adults that said, I did not make any visits to a bike shop, yet they're the owner of a bike. Males, 56%. Not great, that should be improved. Females, 62% of women didn't make a visit to a bike shop. They did not go in. The point of intimidation was to the point where they wouldn't even think of shopping in a bike shop, which is what we've heard when we've looked at the survey work and done our own intercepts and our own mystery shopping to take a look at this phenomenon. Now, this next slide contains a table that shows all adult cyclists and where they plan to purchase their next bicycle in 2014 by gender. Especially bike shops, males 70%, females 42%. Discount stores, males 77%, females 54%. Now, interestingly, both males and females in 2014 said they would buy their next bike. More of them said they would buy their next bike in a discount store than a bike shop. You can work your way through the rest, but go down to the highlighted area at the bottom of the table. Don't know. 27% of males said, I don't know where I'm going to buy my next bike in 2014. Okay. Now, that includes online. Females, 45%. What an opportunity for the American bike industry and bike shops. 45% of women who own a bicycle, who said they plan to purchase a new bicycle in 2014, aren't sure, don't know where they're going to make that next purchase. And yet the industry has no plans whatsoever to reach out to the women's market and to those women to convince them that a bike shop is the best place to buy their next bicycle. This next point is the summary for the webinar. It'll leave us about 10 minutes for Q&A. And what we covered here, as Liz said, we weren't trying to present the whole package. The reports that we publish with tables will run 200 to 300 pages, and we do 3 types of studies in a series. So there's a great, huge amount of information. We've tried to be selective here in what would be most interesting, but we've talked about why women are essential to the future of the bicycle movement industry. We hope we've established that premise. Women are still underrepresented. We hope we've gotten that point across, and the industry has to do something about that. Advocates need to encourage them to do that. Women are the new majority, and really understanding what women are saying and what their bicycling wants and needs are has become absolutely vitally important to moving forward the industry and the advocacy movement, in our opinion. And women have to begin to have more impact on the bicycle business if the traditional mainstream commercial trade hopes to continue to be viable, because it's a fast-paced, fast-moving market. And we're right in the middle, 2014, 2015, 2016, of baby boomers retiring and dropping out of the workforce and becoming the minority in the workforce as well. And Gen Y, the youngest generation, ascending over the next 2 years and several months to becoming the largest portion of the American workforce, and therefore the driving force in the American marketplace. So these are exciting times, but they're times when the industry is going to have to look very clearly at how it embraces the women's market and the women's potential in the market to grow the bicycle business. And bike shops in particular are going to have to make a decision as a channel of trade whether they want to be here tomorrow or whether they want to play a lesser role in what will be the fabric of the American bicycle movement and the American bicycle business. So with that said, Liz, I believe you've got one feature that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, and so I just want to emphasize this is the beginning of a larger body of work that Women Bike is looking at to examine the role that women play in retail. And so we're going to be relying heavily on this amazing data provided by the Gluskin Townley Group to help start to frame the bigger questions that we're going to be asking. And I think a lot of you had really amazing questions about what brands are doing this really well, how come it seems like these manufacturers that talk about being of the streets, still like Levi's, still hasn't put out the women's commuter line. I think these are really good questions that hopefully we're going to get to in our larger retail report that we're going to be issuing out by the end of this year. So this is the beginning. So I want to make that clear to folks in attendance to the conference, the beginning of the conversation. That being said, we're going to continue this conversation at our upcoming event where we're partnering with the Equity Initiative at Future Bike in Pittsburgh on September 11th. Low registration cost, $20, to attend a day of seminars really looking at who has been excluded from the bike conversation thus far. And we made a really strong point to invite and highlight presenters that aren't normally part of the conversation. So I really encourage you all to check that out. And if you are in the area or attending Pro Walk, Pro Bike, to stay a little later and plug into those. So that'll be a good place to continue this conversation as well. So I want to just say, I want to go to the questions that people have been asking. Is there more data on the specific cycling categories in a breakout? For example, is there a way to look at it by use, mountain bike, commuter, etc.?
There's crosstabs. We look at it three ways, but the essential is what we showed, the clusters, which is segmentation, enthusiasts, moving ups, casuals, and frequents. We look at it by generation, baby boomers, Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Z. So that's a demographic profile and look. Each one of those also then looks at types of bicycles that they own. From the standpoint of, going at it from, let's look at racing, let's look at mountain biking. No, we don't do that. That's an activity. And what you also find is, as you move up from casual to enthusiast, those levels of bicyclists own multiple bikes and are engaged in multiple activities.
Great.
So we can report that. I mean, we do cover that, but we don't do it from the standpoint of the bicycle type. We do it from the standpoint of either the demographics or from the standpoint of the segmentation or the segment that they fall into.
Great. Adonia, I have a question for you. In looking at sort of this data, where do you see the whole equity movement inserting, like having a role as far as like where people are purchasing bikes? I thought the slide about how most people were purchasing bicycles are women, like at big box stores and things of that nature. How do you see either the availability of bike shops in certain neighborhoods or the accessibility, I guess, to certain specific types of bike retail? How do you see that playing into sort of being more inclusive in retail?
I think, yeah, I mean, as you said, there is an issue of bike shop deserts. That's a term that I've heard a number of people talking about bike equity use to describe these areas where there just isn't really an option. There's not a community bike shop, there's not a local retailer that people would be able to go to, or maybe they don't feel welcome at one that's nearby. So there's a big need for us to be doing more to connect people to what retail is out there, and I think that shop owners actually have a really great opportunity, this research shows, to start coming up with some innovative ideas for how to make their shops into community spaces with more intention, because there's a lot of people out there who they could probably be adding to their customer lists. And I think it's also good to think about what we can do to support new bike shops opening up in places where people don't have access to bikes. Brian Drayton, who's one of our Equity Advisory Council members, who lives in the Bay Area, has been a real leader in this area in terms of using community bike shops as a way to do community-based redevelopment and also create positive spaces for people to build identities around bicycling in African American communities. So yeah, for me, this data overall, I would say, is really interesting from an equity standpoint, because it provides the numbers to show, check it out. There are a lot of people out there who want to be your customers and are going to be your customers in the future. And so it kind of supplements the more cultural side of things that I tend to look at with the Equity Initiative, where we're thinking about how to build a more inclusive bike culture. It's really helpful to have this sort of data to show the potential.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions asks, $468 is what you cite as the average that a woman wants to spend on a bike. Are bike manufacturers doing a good job of providing those bikes through IBDs? Because it is sort of a lower price point. And then to piggyback off of that, another question was, what brands do you think are doing a good job of being inclusive to women?
Average, you got to be careful with averages. But you look at the whole data set, but yeah, I think bicycle manufacturers, I mentioned in the presentation Humphy, which is clearly a mass merchant brand, but it's been around for generations. Yes, I think bicycle manufacturers are doing a good job of providing the mainstream product. I think where the issues come up, and you've seen this in the women's movement in the Washington, San Francisco Bay Area, and there's another city, I believe, where you've got very well established women's movements to the point where they actually are meeting as groups and holding events. But what's cropped up in the last couple of years, as I understand what you found, is that cargo bikes have become a big issue, and the ability to carry multiple children plus groceries on a bike is part of what women want. But if the bike shops or the local retailers aren't supporting having either the product available or the product at a reasonable price available, the women's movement itself has developed swap meets and the events where used product can be presented, made available, where people can talk about it, buy it, look at it, communicate with each other. And certainly the online communities can do that very effectively. So I think overall, the price points certainly are being met. I don't think that's the issue. I think like that bike Denny that won this design competition, the industry is not listening to all of the people that are riding bicycles and all of the people that would or will ride bicycles to really find out what they want and need, so they're providing products that, like Denny, are designed as urban bikes or designed as something more than a racing bike or a bike for downhill mountain biking. So I think that's the aspect where it needs to be opened up and where there has to be more out of the box, not out of the box as much as in touch with the market thinking.
And then another question, which I definitely had as well. Your data is some of the first that I saw that really pointed to, in 2014, the total ridership sort of starting to shift, where you had 51% of all adult bicyclists as women, which doesn't necessarily seem to align with other data that's out there. Can you explain some of that difference and maybe how you arrived at that number, and then what you see, having done a lot of this analysis, how that might compare?
Sure, and I'll make this brief, and then Elliot can certainly add to it. But as I said at the onset, we have relied on the National Sporting Goods Association bicycle riding participation stats for decades. And when I worked in the industry for decades before that. So you start with the premise that you define who a bicycle riding participant is, which was one of the early questions. NSGA says 7 years of age or older, 6 days or more. is a real participant. And then they also look at 3 groups instead of 4, but they look at 3 groups by the miles ridden, or I'm sorry, by the days participated. So the NSGA, by the way, also has available data on that they collected on folks that rode 1 to 5 days. So the NSGA data can be looked at from 1 and more, and 7 years of age and older. There's another study that's available that's 6 years of age and older. The industry is wanting to find more people that ride bikes, but I think that's predictable. In other words, I don't think you're going to find more than what the numbers now show. With a look at the U.S. Census data, you can, as an example, determine how many Americans there are that are 3 years of age, 4 years of age, 5 years of age, 6 years of age, and then simply apply a percentage, which is the incidence of bicycle riding you find in other age groups. With all of that said, what I'm trying to get at is we've got good, I think, meaningful data available on bicycle riding participants. And so we rely on that when we do a study like the American Bicyclist Survey or a study. We go to a panel and a panel manager, and we state that in our methodology so that anybody can double check who it is we're using, how we're using it. We use a balanced panel. We make sure we use a mathematician and a statistician to further balance, to keep everything in line before we do extrapolations. And our numbers from the American Bicyclist Study are very close to what the NSGA numbers are for what is total bicycle riding participation, and the ability to look at it historically for over 20 years so that you can analyze the trends.
And I think another important, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I don't think that this needs to be beaten up, and I think a lot of the folks that may be listening to this don't understand that there is quality data on the issue of bicycle riding participation. It's available today, and whether you like what it says or not, the facts aren't lying. Go ahead, Liz.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the other really important thing that I really got out of these numbers is that, yes, it doesn't, from the experience, it doesn't feel like that there's as many women riders out there as there are men. I mean, even just existing in this world as a bike rider. And so that number really surprised me. But I think what I'm understanding from your data is that depending on how you define bike rider, that number might be tipping. But what's happening is that women are owning bikes and riding them, maybe not as much as they would like to, but they're not going into shops to get them repaired, to purchase more accessories, or to certainly not upgrade their bicycle. And I want to just also point out, we're running out of time, but I want to remind folks that this is the beginning of a part of a larger retail study that Women Bike is undertaking to really get at this question in a deep, meaningful way. And hopefully the outcome will be solutions for retailers that we'll be really excited to share. We really believe in the local bike shop and these IBDs as the basis for building our cycling community within our cities. And so we want to figure out how to sort of unlock the magic, if you will, of making spaces that feel inclusive, not just to women, but to a diverse range of bike users. And we want to make sure that we're being helpful to IBDs in that regard through this examination. And so getting the numbers, and so thank you very much, Elliot and Jay, for bringing your expertise to this conversation to really start to understand where we are, where we've been, and where the potential is to go given these consumer behaviors that you've started to examine. So anyway, I wanted to, any final thoughts, Jay?
No, I thank you very much. Sorry we went a little over on time, and we'll try to do a better job the next time.
I think it was really exciting, and I just was really trying to hold time for folks' questions. So I thank you for those that hung in there. We really appreciate it. If we can go to the last slide, I think there is just to kind of make sure that you have their contact information if you want to follow up with Elliot and Jay. Also note that we are recording this session, and we'll make it available through the bikeleague.org website if you need to catch any of this if you came in late or if you had to leave early. And then we'll make that available. And the other thing, the last slide, I believe, is just how to stay connected to Women Bike. Make sure that you know that you can always connect with us via our Facebook page. We have a dedicated website. Follow our blog. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or ideas regarding this, especially this study, a couple of you have put in with questions about your experience as a retailer. I'd love to connect personally. Feel free to drop me an email, and we can continue the conversation offline. Thank you, Dr. Lugo, for your time as well, and I appreciate everyone that put time and energy into this webinar. Hopefully it was a good use of everyone's time.
Thank you, Liz. Good job moderating.
All right, thanks. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.